encouraging, inspiring, and empowering mothers on their parenting journey. Welcome to the OHbaby podcast. Being a mum can be overwhelming and unrelenting, we know. Each episode, we'll be bringing you the top tips, advice, and words of wisdom from experts and industry leaders to help you navigate your own path. It's the information you can trust. Mama, you got this.
Hello and welcome to the OHbaby podcast. I am Angela Pedersen, founder of OHbaby, and today we have Dr Ainslee Rowan joining us from Brain Under Construction. Hi Ainsley.
Hello Angela, thanks for having me.
So Ainsley, you are a sleep and development expert and educator, and you've been writing for us for the past year or so on subjects that are important or of importance, like tummy time and motor developments, and you'll soon be writing for us on baby sleep. And you are currently pregnant with your second, which I hear hasn't been terribly smooth sailing.
No, it hasn't. I have, with my son, I had hyperemesis gravidarum, which is all day, all night, severe morning sickness, so to speak. And I have had it again this time around as well. So it has been a bit of a journey. And if I need to, if I suddenly disappear off screen and mute my computer, it's just because I'm going to have a wee vomit. But hopefully that won't happen. Today.
Oh, I feel for you. Very relatable. As we talked prior to our little pressing record, but yes, I've had it 3 times, and yes, this is not a fun part, but hang in there. You'll get through it.
Really there. On the home side.
Yeah. If anyone's watching on YouTube, I have Charlie, my dog, with me. He just came and sat with me, so Charlie's joining us. Hopefully he won't bark at any cats that go past or anything, but he's hanging, he's chilling, we're good. So today we're going to chat about the subject of our last article in the winter issue of the mag, which was 12 simple ways you can optimize movement for your baby in the first year. So let's start with number 1, nappy-free time.
Let's get into it. Cool, all right. I mean, it goes without saying that a baby's legs and body can move a lot more freely when they don't have a nappy on. Today's nappies are incredible in comparison to what they used to be. When I was in diapers, it was those big white cloth nappies, right? Yes. So, nowadays, reusable nappies and disposable nappies are a lot more movable. But the reality is that when a baby is learning to move, especially in those like newborn days or in that first kind of 3 to 4 months, taking a nappy off does decrease the amount of resistance that they are having to, that they have around their legs to be able to move them. So, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with, how you go to change a baby and when they're quite young, they start to kick quite a lot. Yeah. It's that feeling and you're like, stop kicking, I'm trying to change your nappy, but it's that feeling of freedom. All of a sudden their legs are free. So I always encourage especially in those early days, for parents to set aside nappy free time. And this is usually when we're greeted with parents going, oh, but I don't want the mess. Yeah. Yeah, cool, right? But, my first was a boy, and without fail, you would take the nappy off and there would be mess because we all know that penises do different things when you take the nappies off. So I guess just setting up an environment where the parent and the child can feel comfortable with nappy free time. Pop a couple of towels underneath them, or waterproof mat.
Yeah,
and just let them kind of kick around, because it's those small movements that feel like they're kind of like a sack of potatoes when they're first born, right? Yeah. And very quickly, through a process that involves primitive reflexes, they learn how to move their body. And so we want to encourage their body to move as much as they need it to move in those early months.
Right, yeah. I do remember, being told how important like tummy time is and having that nappy free time. I thought it was more around nappy rash and stuff like that, so airing things out.
I've seen about that too, like this.
Also a benefit.
Yeah.
For the price of one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was always at a risk. So I would get those big white nappy things that I didn't put on my child, but used for just, over the shoulder burping kind of, I don't know, they were just seemed handy for everything. But yeah, that was what the kids would lie on to have that nappy free times. There was always something. There was always one end was going at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, bless. So that was number one. So number two was free playtime. Tell me about that.
Yes. So free play, some people listening to this might have heard of the term free play when it comes to children. And you're kind of like, well, how does my newborn or my 6-month-old free play? Basically, it's just a term for giving them space and time to explore their body and their environment based on their age and stage of development and where their brain is currently at. So it's pretty easy. Just providing opportunity for them to be able to move their body in space, which sounds so simple, right? But actually giving a baby an opportunity to lie on the ground, on their back, and actually explore where the body is in space and how it moves is really powerful, really, really powerful. And it's so often missed because in today's day and age, like we have evolved so much in the last 30 years when it comes to baby things, right?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot more baby containers. So sometimes it can be really common that a baby would go from, a capsule into a seat, a baby seat, or a bouncer or whatever, to then going into the pram, to go back into the bouncer, to then go into a carrier or be held by the parent. So it's just about carving out time and habits, really. And we'll talk about this soon because this is on the list as well, but like habit stacking around, okay, what are we going to do when, this time of the day, let's actually give them 5 minutes on the floor to kick around. You can combine free play with nappy free time. There's lots of things, lots of these elements can be paired together. And it's all about giving a baby space and time to explore their body.
You're right. Okay, cool. And so I'm looking down the list and these kind of age appropriate toys. When I think of free play, what also comes to mind is I used to have one of those things that, I can't think of the word.
Did you put them upright in the...
No. I did have exosources. That was when they were a little bit older, but like at a younger age, it was the mobile type, the one that you could put on the ground and you'd have dangling toys from.
Baby jump. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my brain. I'm not pregnant. It's forever. No, actually, it's running this old age.
Those are fantastic as well.
So that would be like part of your free play, just for them looking and kind of potentially touching and
But there is one aspect that parents often don't know about, and that's that the vision of a baby, especially when they're newborn, is quite limited. So they can usually see about 30 centimeters and everything else is quite blurry. And they're only seeing black and white, so they don't have a whole heap of scope to be able to see color. So when we're thinking about age appropriate toys and we're combining that with free play and nappy free time and all of the above, then we want to think, okay, cool, what is age appropriate for them at this particular point in time? And
right.
Black and white images that are really like block black and white images, not like fine drawn black and white images. And space to explore their body, put the black and white images to one side and maybe one on the other side so they can turn and look each way, is age appropriate free play, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. I get it.
Like a 4 or 5 month old is going to be able to grab those toys from the play gym. They're also going to be able to see far enough to grab them and see far enough or see enough color to be able to enjoy the colors of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when is that kind of color transition?
That's a really great question. Off the top of my head, I want to say it starts to integrate. So the colors slowly come in, and I think they start to integrate around 5-ish weeks, but don't quote me on that. It might be more like 8 weeks. And I think the first color that comes in is red.
Oh, interesting. I did not know this. This is a new thing. I've learned something new today. There you go.
If there's any optometrists listening, they're probably going to be like, hold on, it's actually, 7.5 weeks, but you've got a ballpark there. So what it does those colors kind of phase in. And what you'll find, some parents notice that if they wear a black and white top, you know, a black and white stripy top, the kid might be absolutely fascinated staring at their top. And the other thing that creating age appropriate things for them to look at helps with is learning how to focus as well, because you know how sometimes babies are born and they have the wobbly eyes, you know. Yes. learning how to focus their eyes on one thing is a skill, and that's something that they're working on in those early days as well.
So next on the list, number 3 is tummy time. Tell me about that.
Cool.
So like integrating all of these all in one go.
Yeah, I know. And so once they sound like a lot because there's like, you know, 11 or 12 points. But when we actually start to break them down, you're like, oh, a lot of these can be combined into everyday life and, you know, everyday habits. So, and some of them can be combined into, you know, one area. So it's pretty easy to do. And the reality when it comes to, you know, child development is that we don't want to make it hard. We don't want parents to be stressing about it. But what we want to do is give parents the tools and education to be able to understand how important some of this stuff is, and then just integrate it into life. You know, if you don't know, then you don't know. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So tummy time is you know what? It's actually a really controversial topic once you start into it. And the reason for this is because you've got camp do tummy time, and you've also got camp don't do tummy time, because you know a baby will learn to get onto their tummy when they are ready to get onto their tummy. So there's a few reasons why there's this bone of contention, and I am definitely a huge tummy time advocate, but not in the traditional sense. Tummy time is essentially just another word for interactive head control. So a baby learning to get control, vestibular control and motor control, and understand where their body is in space, basically, over their head and neck. And that takes time to build up. So I think that we've almost done an injustice to tummy time, calling it tummy time, because the reality is that it's about so much more than that. And it can be done in so many different ways. So tummy time isn't just about putting your baby on their tummy, on the floor, until they get grizzly and picking them up, because some babies, they just don't tolerate that. So we want to do kind of age-appropriate, graded, interactive head control in a way that suits the baby. So in the early days, that might be lying on mum's tummy, and occasionally they pick their head up and look each way, and then they pop it back down.
Nice.
It might be after every nappy change, putting them on their stomach for 20 to 30 seconds, just during the day, obviously not at night, because at night we want to keep things as, you know, low key as possible. Yeah, totally. And it's also about interactive head control, or tummy time, is something that we want to accumulate over the day. It's not necessarily something that we want to do 20 minutes of off the bat once a day, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah. So make it gradual. It's not like you go to the gym and go straight to the 100K like bench, whatever. I don't even know what those things are. I should know. I'll get there. But it's like that, you know, you're gradual with your weights.
Absolutely. And it's age appropriate, age and stage appropriate, just like it would be fitness appropriate, you know. So there's lots of different ways that you can do supported tummy time, and lots of ways you can hold them to do, you know, interactive head control as well. So things like, you know, the leopard hold, where the baby's tummy, I need to stand up here, the baby's tummy is against your forearm, and you're holding them against your chest, and their head is resting in your hand. It gives them an opportunity to be able to pick up their head and look around if they want to. Now, obviously, you wouldn't do that with a newborn, but you could easily do that with a 4-month-old. And that would give them, you know, if you're doing that as you're carrying them around the house 2 or 3 times, that clocks up to 3 or 4 minutes of tummy time or interactive head control throughout the day. You pair that, this is the habit stacking stuff, right? You pair that with 30 seconds on their tummy after an nappy change if they're happy and fed and content. And before you know it, if you've done, you know, how many nappy changes are we doing in those early days?
So many.
Quite a few, right?
That's just in cases.
So true. We're going out, change to nappy now, and then there's a punami as you walk out the door anyway.
Actually.
Fun, right?
Yeah.
So that all adds up. So yeah, I guess my biggest take home with tummy time is make it easy. Make sure that you are integrating it into everyday activities. Ensure that baby is happy and supported. And yeah, focus less on my baby has to be on their stomach flat for an extended period of time alone, and focus more on what can we do to connect with them? Can we get down on the ground with them? You know, when they're in that newborn age, their legs, they're in that physiological flexion, which means that, you know, they come out of the womb and their legs can't straighten up. Are you familiar with, you know, how they're in that crouched up position? Yeah. So that is called physiological flexion. So we don't want to be putting babies who are brand new straight on their tummy when they haven't had a chance to they kind of like unfurl like a flower.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it does sound beautiful. So, you know, they need time and space to be able to stretch out and open up, but we also want to guide them and support them through that as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So number 4, bare feet.
Yeah.
What's that?
Sounds like a really, really weird one, especially for like babies, right? But babies are using their feet a lot. And there's a lot of primitive reflexes that are tied into feet movement and toes and stuff. So, you know, when you're feeding a newborn or you're feeding a baby and their feet are pushing in against your belly. You're familiar with?
Yes.
Their feet.
Vague recollection.
Vague recollection. Hopefully some of the people listening will understand, will be like, yeah, I know what's going on there.
Relevant right now. Yes.
Yeah. That is a baby using their feet. And so if we put big chunky soles on them or shoes on them, then they lose that ability to be able to get that sensation through their feet. And most people are not putting chunky shoes on babies, because they're hard to find, because most soles are flexible until they need proper protection, right? Yeah. But this is why, because feet movement is really important. There's 26 bones and 33 joints in your feet, and those joints are all giving proprioceptive feedback to your brain about where your body is in space, and that feedback and those neurons start, they start wiring pretty early on. So yeah.
Interesting. With my first, I kind of bought everything for her. It was like all the shoes, all the things. Not hard shoes, more the leather ones, and these little booties and socks. But even now, she just wasn't interested in them. She'd kick them off, and I don't know if that was intentional. It was probably just more, playing with her feet. But she was definitely and now she, most of the time she's barefoot. Or wearing sandals at the very most. But our kids love having bare feet. But she was also one from a very, very early age to always want to kind of be in that standing position.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
that about?
Well, I mean, there's lots of different reasons. She might have just been on the earlier side of motor development. There could have been a little bit of body tension there. The other thing is that standing is a really rewarding position, just like sitting. Right, it's quite a fun position for them to be in. They can see the world from a different environment, and so it's not abnormal for parents to. They also have primitive reflexes that come and go according to what's going on. So with a newborn baby, you've got a primitive reflex called a stepping reflex. So if you hold a newborn baby up and you put their feet up against the edge of a table, then their foot will actually lift up and they'll take a step and their leg will straighten. Now, this is a reflex that disappears, and there's a reason for it. It helps engage or build pathways in the brain for a baby to be able to actively move their legs consciously in a way that they want to. So there's lots of aspects of baby development and ages and phases where parents are quite often like, the baby wants to walk, let's help her, let's facilitate this. And the reality is that whilst doing that, it's not there for a baby to build strength and to walk, because their hips aren't ready for that yet, because their hips are still developing. So sometimes as parents, it's really easy to encourage our babies to be doing an age or phase thing or doing a skill that isn't necessarily age appropriate, but it feels like it is, if that makes any sense.
Interesting. Yeah,
And
because my first Ella, she was like walking at like 8.5 to 9 months.
yeah, she's
It was,
early, well, not an early walker, that's still within like normal limits. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but we weren't trying to encourage it. It was just, and she's like a New Zealand sports rep now, so
Oh,
she's just a real sporty
really?
kid. And she was
Yeah.
really cool. Like when she was born, she wasn't in. I bought all this like newborn size clothing.
Yeah.
In 0 to 3 months, she didn't fit any of it. We had to get 3 to 6 months. She's
Oh
like,
wow.
she's a
Straight into
giant.
swim.
She's still a giant. She's taller than me. Anyway,
Oh wow.
I'm
That's
totally
pretty
going off topic.
Well, no, it's good. These like sometimes these tangents are good because they're great for listeners to like to get more information. Yeah, I definitely think there are some kids that are just motor driven as well. And that's the other thing, like different temperaments, different genetics, different personalities are going to be driven to do different things. And sometimes you've got kids that are more interested in developing communication skills than they are motor skills. So there's a big spectrum when it comes to what is normal in the motor development world.
Yeah, and all three of my kids have been completely different. Like,
So fascinating as well.
that's not the same for number 2 or number 3, So yeah,
That's interesting. One thing I will mention about the bare feet thing as well is that the feet are born as baby feet, and as they move through that first year, the feet need to build strength and they start to develop the arches of the feet. So that's another thing, that being barefoot as much as possible, or in socks or in soft booties, it helps develop the musculature in the feet so that they can be ready for crawling, standing, walking, all of those things later on.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So number 5, clothing and surface.
Yeah, this one is kind of common sense. And I remember writing the article and I took it out and then I put it back in and then I took it out and then I was like, no, I'm going to put this back in because I have this conversation regularly in practice with parents and families. So depending on the age and stage that a child is at, we want to use appropriate surfaces and appropriate clothing. Now, I'm going to use crawling as an example because that happens in the first year of life. And I'm going to use my son as an example. We had hardwood floors in our house. Okay. Yeah. And so he started crawling and he was wearing pants because that was just the time of year it was. And it was really impacting his ability to be able to crawl. So you take his pants off and then he can get traction on that hardwood floor.
Yeah, understood.
Which meant that crawling was easy. You take away that resistance. However, I have conversations with other families who have carpeted floors, who have pants on, and it goes the other way. Instead of creating a slippery surface like hardwood floors, the pants on the carpet create traction, which sometimes helps them, and other times just means that it's like really hard for them to move.
Right. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't think of that. So having pants is better than not on carpet.
Well, it depends on the surface, and it also depends on the kid.
Yeah.
So and so parents are like, oh, but then they're going to get rough knees or like sore knees, and their knees do toughen up, and if they get sore, then you put pants on them for a couple of days and then take them back off, and they do kind of harden up. But this is another aspect where bare feet comes into it as well, because if you've got quite often when they're crawling, all kids learn to crawl in different manners and different ways. Some kids are commando crawling, some kids are bare crawling, some kids are hands and knees crawling. We love to see hands and knees crawling because it means that we're getting that cross crawl pattern going, which helps with building neural pathways in the brain. But we also know that getting to that hands and knees crawling can happen in many different wonderful ways. So when you have bare legs and bare feet, it gives them a real opportunity to not be held back by clothing, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. So environment, kind of similar, but not.
Yeah, no, totally the same. But then the environment is where you can have a play and kind of push the boat out and encourage a child to explore further and test their boundaries. So crawling in a controlled environment inside is, that's great, but crawling on the grass is a totally different environment from a sensory perspective. There's a lot more, the feeling is different on their hands and knees. The terrain is different. It feels different under their hands and their knees. So this is where we want to tie in sensory with development. If you had concrete, that's going to be a little bit hard. You probably don't want them crawling on that unless it's smooth concrete. But then when they're learning to walk or learning to stand, if they were standing on pebbles or gravel, that's actually creating instability, which allows them to develop more strength.
Or sand as well. Yeah.
Sand, absolutely. And kids love sand.
Sand.
They're not trying to put it in their mouth,
I know. Oh, that's exactly where I was going to. Like chips, sand, awesome. Yeah. Great.
I remember taking my son when he was learning to crawl out to Muriwai Beach, which was it's beautiful black sand.
Yes.
And honestly, I think he ate more sand than he did in food and milk over a year. It was poop and sand for days. But he had a great time.
I have a similar story at Piha. Just, I think we had a couple of, bought some hot chips or something, had dinner at the beach, and
yeah,
it was like, let's just put this chip in the sand and then eat that, and then mostly let's just get the sand all over it. We've got all the photos. Fun times. So environment, the powerful pause. Tell me about the powerful pause.
I mean, this applies to all aspects of parenting and probably life as well, but I'm going to apply it just to developmental, like motor developmental stuff, or motor development. So, when a child really wants something, so they might be learning to walk or they're learning to crawl, and it depends on the personality of the kids. Some kids are going to, I want that toy, I'm going to figure out how to get it. Don't get it for me. Other kids are going to start to whinge or cry because they want you to bring it closer, because they're like, oh, it's a bit hard. It's a bit too much hard work. So figuring out where your kid is on that spectrum and pausing before we respond to them.
I have 14 and 16-year-olds that still like whinge. You can make my lunch. It's like, really? Come on.
Yeah. Well, sorry, my 4-year-old this morning wanted his drink bottle, and it was like a meter away from him, and I was on the other side of the kitchen, and I was like, just get up and take 2 steps and get it. And he was like, oh, I want you to get it. So I understand. So the powerful pause, honestly, when it comes to parenting, it's hit and miss, but to some aspects when it comes to motor development, giving them a pause to figure things out. Also, like if they're crawling and they are safe and they are trying to climb up one stair, it's let them do it, let them explore that, because when they tumble or when they fall, provided they are safe and not going to hurt themselves, then they're learning their body limits.
Yeah.
And so learning their body limits rather than rescuing all the time is really helpful for you as a parent knowing their limits, but for them as a child developing knowing their limits as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's so cool. I like that. Yeah. It's just kind of giving them a little bit of, let's just see how this pans out.
Yeah, absolutely. And they might surprise you, or they might get into trouble regularly. And that also depends on, how risk adverse your child is, which is often a temperament and personality thing as well. But it's good for them to know where their limits are, and they don't know their limits if we keep rescuing them.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And the disclaimer is here that I'm not saying, be irresponsible or let them hurt themselves. We don't want that, but just giving them space and time. And giving them space and time to figure it out.
Pause, not the unpowerful pause.
Yes. Not the injure my child pause.
Good outcome pause. So number 8, connection.
Yes, connection is so important right throughout parenting, but definitely in those early days as well. And it can be so easy to get caught up in rhythms and of the day that we forget to actually have those moments of connection because there's so much going on. But those moments of one-to-one connection are really, really powerful for the brain development, basically. It's those moments of eye connection while you're feeding. It's those moments of, chatting and having that baby talk back and forth. It's those moments of encouragement when they are trying to climb that stair, and you're watching to think, should I rescue them or not? It's that one-to-one connection that is so valuable.
So that could be also like reading a book, or just having one of those big, picture book type things together, sitting on the knee, hanging out, playing with toys on the ground, lying with them while they're on their tummy, while you're on your tummy, having tummy time too.
And exactly. And being aware of that one-to-one connection it basically builds an opportunity for attunement. So as parents, we want to be attuned to our child's needs. So as a parent, you naturally zone into what they need. Like, I'm sure with your 14 and 16-year-old and your other, I don't know how old your other child is.
18.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure you have moments of knowing what they need.
Yeah.
Probably ahead of what they do.
Yeah.
And so as parents, we want to just tune in and make sure that we're having those slower moments so that we can, build that attunement with our babies.
Yeah, so good. And you kind of need that all the way through for 14, 16 and 18-year-olds, is that, and just keeping that connection through the teenage years as well. Awesome time. That's a whole nother podcast.
Probably a whole nother magazine, let's be honest.
Yeah, teen. No, teen. Yeah. We'll see how that one goes. Anyway. A word on baby containers.
Yes.
Is it like the extra sauces and stuff, or containers for I don't know.
When I say baby containers, people are like, "Oh, do you mean Tupperware?"
Yeah.
No, I don't. But that's funny. Yeah, sustainment. So when I'm talking about a baby container, I just mean things that contain a baby. So prams, capsules, extra sauces. Walkers are on the kind of borderline because they don't necessarily contain a baby. They facilitate a baby to do a movement. Even like swings at the park. It's a form of baby container, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can get those swings, bounce nets or swings for when babies are little. So basically, baby containers is also controversial if you really get into the nitty-gritty. You've got camp, never use any baby containers, and you've got camp, use them all the time. So once again, let's just be realistic and practical here. There are fantastic. Yeah, realistic and practical is where I like to sit. And biologically normal as well. Like, where are we at based on age and stage? So baby containers like capsules are absolutely freaking fantastic because they save babies' lives, right? Yeah. And so a massive tick. Babies in themselves are absolutely not a problem. Baby containers, when they are being used really, really frequently, and then there's limited time left in a day or left in while a baby is awake to be doing things like interactive head control, tummy time, nappy free time, free play, practicing crawling, all of those sorts of things. That's when it can become a little bit problematic because the baby it's taking away opportunities for movement that would have happened otherwise. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a matter of figuring out what's going to fit your family. So, I'm due with baby number 2 and I have a bouncer net already tucked away in the nursery, ready to go. Because a bouncer net is an absolutely fantastic way to be able to keep baby safe off the floor, away from the cat, dog, and 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Whilst I have a shower.
Exactly. It's like the basic things that you need to do around the house where you require 2 hands. It's like, what can I contain my child in for, a short period of time? It's the showers, it's the getting the dishes done or folding the washing or making dinner.
Yeah. And there is going to be people that would argue. There's going to be people that would argue that, you just put them on the floor. But the reality is that, we have a dog who likes to just tear through the house sometimes. Sometimes she gets the zoomies, right? Which is really, really funny when you don't have a newborn on the floor in the middle of the lounge, we're potentially in a zoomies route, you know? So it's just about figuring out what's going to work for your whānau and you know, how to utilize things. And also there's ages and stages for baby containers. So, you know, like a baby carrier is technically a baby container, as is a jolly jumper, which actually, or a baby bouncer. I'm going to call it a baby bouncer rather than and so there's ages and stages that are appropriate for particular baby containers. So if you were to use, for example, you know, a spring-loaded baby jumper that hangs from a doorway, then you would ideally make sure that that child is able to pull to stand by themselves and stand fairly sturdily before you pop them in it. The idea is that when we are using baby containers, we need to be aware that they're not actually facilitating learning skills. So if you put a baby in an exercise to teach them how to walk, we know that from research that doesn't help them learn to walk any earlier. But what it does do is take away from the skill set that they need to be able to walk and build the strength to be able to do that. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, because development is sequential. So when we're rolling, we're building a lot of strength, you know, through the torso, amongst many other things, which means that that abdominal strength gives them stability to move into that crawling posture. So, you know, it's like a ladder, and the prior movements help the next movement that's coming. So when we start to promote movements that a baby isn't quite ready for example, if they weren't pulling to stand and you had them in an exercise a lot, like a lot, then you might be building strength in the legs and they might be getting really strong. But are their hips developed enough yet to handle that load? Because the hips are born, when babies are born, they're quite shallow and they develop and they become deeper. So the whole kind of movement development process is not only about learning the prior skills to get to the skill that they're currently at, but also about skeletal maturity as well.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Which kind of, you know, the two topics, number 10 is age appropriate toys. I used to putting my baby in the exerciser. Usually it was just when I was making dinner. It was good because there was all these toys to kind of play with and stimulate, and all noises and jingles and, you know, all of that kind of thing. But I mean, by the time they were in exercises, it was kind of like, I don't know, 7 or 8 months or so. I don't even remember, around about that age.
Yeah. So they're upright already, and most of the time they'll probably be sitting by themselves anyway around that age as well. Yeah. So the funny thing about age appropriate toys, and the comment that I had to make around this, is that sometimes age appropriate toys are not necessarily what we think they would be. You know, sometimes you can put a kitchen whisk and the baby will go to town with that. And beautiful you know, purpose-built toy beside them that they don't want to borrow. So I guess so exploring what you have around the house and what's in nature, and kind of opening up your brain to toys rather than being toy specific, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah. So it's the tactile, it's the experience of it. What are they learning with this? Yeah.
And also, are they interested? Because sometimes they're more interested in something that's actually not a toy and it's an everyday item around the house, and if it's safe for them to have, then go for gold.
From an early stage, it's going in the mouth, so it's got to be safe. Don't give them it's good.
No. So and it's also little things like if you've got a 2-month-old and you know those holy balls, that those plastic holy balls, which are they can get their fingers in and around that, and they can use their primitive reflexes to close their hand. So that's helping them learn how to open and close their hand. But if you were to give them like a bigger ball and expect them to pick it up, then they just don't have the coordination for that yet. Which is like, as I'm saying this, I'm like, this is really obvious stuff, right? But as a parent, sometimes it's confusing because you're like, well, what's going on here?
Well,
Like, so what's,
it's a whole new world for, first-time parents.
yeah, it is.
And, even from pregnancy, everything's just like information overload. And,
It is.
we've got the benefit of ages and stages to kind of learn as we go. But it's important to, learn those things as well so that we can help them with their development and
Yeah.
understand it as well. And also be in that position of knowing, hey, the kitchen whisk is going to do just fine.
Oh, 100%. And I think it's also like, as parents, we can feel like we have to do everything perfectly. And that pressure that we put on ourselves is just, oh, it's just so unnecessary. But it's such a, like, I felt it, I've got many friends who felt it. I've worked with many people and families who really feel that pressure to do everything perfectly. So it's about stepping back, being realistic and practical about ages and stages, and also biological norms. Where is this baby at? What can they do?
Yeah, it's pretty. It may seem obvious too.
Yeah. Sometimes you need someone to spell that out though, and just kind of go, it's okay, relax, let's just lean into what's happening at the moment.
Yes, I love that. It's just that should be a mantra throughout all your parenting years.
Even to age 18 and beyond.
And beyond. So number 11, habit stacking. We're nearly at the end here. Tell me about habit stacking.
All right, so I've spoken a little bit about this, earlier. So basically it's about taking all of the information that we've talked about today, because it kind of, for some, it might feel overwhelming, but it doesn't need to be, especially not if we start to habit stack some of the stuff in. So it can be as simple as, like I suggested earlier, after every nappy change, doing, 20 to 30 seconds of tummy time. And as that child gets older, that you might find that they're able to do a couple of minutes of tummy time after every single nappy change. It's about, habit stacking can be simple as well. Like, it's about, if you have a child who, some children are really motor driven, so they really like to move. So it's about, instead of always, coming home and putting them straight into the bounce net, then pop them on the floor if it's safe. It's about figuring out rhythms and rituals that fit with your day to create space, basically, for motor development.
Nice.
And babies the other thing I want to stress here is that we don't want anyone to feel stressed about motor development. This is why we're having this chat, because we want parents to feel informed and educated, but also relaxed. Like, babies are going to learn to walk. It's happening.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, it is happening. Okay. And so these wonderful ways or ideas are just ways to, I guess, give opportunity for development to happen in the sequential way that brain needs it to happen.
Yeah. And like, if I think about that first year, a lot of the time they're sleeping. These are small moments of, getting them to do something. It could be 5 or 10 minutes in, their 3-hour cycle or whatever.
Yeah, totally. We don't want to add to the load or the concern, but lots of these things are actually, 30, 40 years ago, it's what we were doing anyway. But lots changed. A lot has changed in how we raise babies, and life is busier, and we have a lot more stuff thrown at us when it comes to babies. And sometimes that stuff it just adds to the confusion.
Keeping it simple can be a wonderful thing.
Yes, it can. Absolutely. Yeah. So
mind,
true.
body, yeah, all those things. So good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so lastly, getting outside often.
Yes, outside is so good. They have that there's that saying that if everything's turning to custard, add water or add fresh air.
Yes.
Have you ever heard that?
I haven't heard that, but my practice would be to get outside. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if stuff's not going well, some fresh air does everyone some good. The other thing is that fresh air is like, it's a sensory bath. Going outside, there's the breeze on the face, there's if you're under a tree, then you're looking at dappled light and the leaves moving above you. There's grass to feel, there's sand to touch. There's lots of things to do outside. And it can be really calming for a parent's nervous system, but also for a baby's nervous system as well. So I think often it's really easy when you have a baby to kind of get trapped inside, especially if you're a winter baby. Like if you've had a winter baby, you're just in this like cocoon. So yeah, that's why I added it on, because I think it's important sometimes to just be reminded that outside is so great from a sensory and development perspective, but it's also really good for helping babies develop their circadian rhythm in that first 2 to 4 months of life as well, because babies are born without a circadian rhythm. And so the exposure to natural daylight helps their brain figure out day from night. And all parents love their babies to know day from night.
It's always good.
It's good.
I can't wait to talk about sleep with you, because I have lots of
can't wait either. I have so much to say. So much to say. Yeah.
Good stuff there. Hey, so one last question that we ask all of our guests is, what is one thing that you swore you'd never do as a parent that you totally do now?
So many things. I think actually I'm gonna be a bit naughty and flip this question and go, it's the things that I never thought in a million years that I would have to do that have caught me off guard. The first thing that comes to mind is a little bit un-PC, and I was like, can I share this? And I was like, you know what? I can't be the only mum to have done this. But, I never thought in a million years that in becoming a parent that I would, pick up a poo with my bare hands. You just
never did.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, I'll black that out from my memory. Maybe you take your there's just instances where we had an age and stage where if you took your eyes off a certain little human, then they would get their nappy down, and regardless of where they were, regardless of what you had on hand available to sort the situation out and do the business. So you just, in some ways, parenting is like it's this beautiful, amazing journey. There's also, you're constantly challenged, constantly tested, and doing things that you just didn't think were imaginable.
Yeah. Yes. Do you know, if I was to just following on that theme, before children, I didn't talk about poos and wees.
Oh,
Those kids, it's like one of your hot topics. What's this?
And filling and stuff as well. You just and then all of a sudden you move into the stage of your life where it's common conversation. What has happened here? But yeah.
Our conversation's gone down the toilet, so to speak. Oh.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I guess that's not something that I swore I would never do. I think because I have worked in pediatric chiropractic, I'm a pediatric chiropractor as well. So because I've worked for nearly over a decade with parents, I think I was quite realistic around the reality of parenting to some extent. So I wasn't hard and fast with lots of aspects of, I will do this, I won't do that. Oh my gosh, actually.
Oh, here we go.
I know. Something just popped into my mind. I actually said, oh, this is really controversial. We might have to finish up the podcast first. I did say prior to having children that I would never, ever, ever sleep train. And that is something that we did end up doing, and it's kind of led me to more sleep education and I have so much more to say on this topic. But yes, we'll stop there.
Oh gosh, sleep. It's just such a hot topic, isn't it? I
So controversial as well.
it
Like
is.
the fact that I had those opinions prior to having children is fascinating. And then the fact that we went through it and we kind of came out the other side, and actually, dare I say it, sleep training didn't actually work for us as a family, which is what led me to doing more study. And so now my specialty is like holistic and responsive sleep support, which doesn't involve sleep training strategies, and it's quite different from kind of those sleep training norms. But just now I'm working with families in sleep, and it's just such a controversial area.
It really is. Yeah,
It doesn't need to be.
And perhaps the controversy lies around the fact that there are so many sleep deprived people who, like it's just so impacting.
Yeah, it is. It's impacting.
Everyone has to do something that's going to get them through and survive what is used as a form of torture. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, totally.
And let's not judge what's working for someone.
Yes, and I think that that's the other like confusing point for people, is that everyone assumes in the sleep training paradigm, you assume that if you do X, Y, and Z, it gives you A, B, and C results, because it assumes that all children are the same. But we know that there is so much variability when it comes to sleep, that what works for one family might not work for another. And so we've kind of created this social culture around asking about sleep and handing out unsolicited advice on sleep. And every family's situation is different, and every child is different and responds differently. So, you've had 3 kids. Did they all sleep exactly the same?
Completely different, all 3. Yeah. First one, I remember like a friend coming to visit and bringing a meal and being like, so how's the sleep? And honestly, she slept perfectly for the first 12 weeks. I was just having the best sleeps of my life. Everything was good. I'd feed her and she'd go back to sleep, and it was awesome. And then we went camping, and I was really aware of the noise she was making and stuff. And so I feel like I overfed her or something. And yeah, everything went out the door. And then, gosh, until she was about 2 years old, she didn't sleep through, and it was torture. And we tried sleep training, and that did nothing worked. It was awful. Then the second one had reflux, so that was fun. And then the third one was the most perfect sleeper in the world. And you wrap him up and just put him down, and he'd just be like, oh, must be sleep time. It's just like, oh. I'm so glad I had the awful ones first, though, because if I had him and then had the others, it would be like, what the heck? There's something wrong with these children.
Actually, and that is the reality for a lot of parents. They get the unicorn sleepers first when if their subsequent children are not unicorn sleepers, and they are like, their mind is blown. But yeah, I'm so glad you got to experience that, especially after a 3rd hyperemesis pregnancy. Like, that's wonderful. Someone was looking out for you.
Nice little gift there.
yeah. And it's also a great example of temperament as well, and how temperament is a driving, genetics is actually a driving factor behind sleep. And that's not something that's ever often talked about, but we know that anywhere between 40 to 60% of sleep characteristics is from genetic components. So when you look at that, and you also think about, with your first daughter, you went camping, everything was okay for that first 12 weeks, and you went camping, but you also happened to go camping around the time where she's where her brain started to consolidate sleep into different sleep cycles, or like different sleep architecture, and there's a lot going on from a brain development perspective. It's really easy to go, well, actually, camping, I ruined my child for 2 years because but actually it probably would have happened if you weren't camping as well, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I worked that one out, but I felt like I'm never going camping again. We're not doing that for the other 2. No, and we did. It's okay. It did not.
Cool.
Yeah.
You're camping for life. Good. Yeah, cool.
Hey, it has been so great to chat with you. And I feel like we can have a lot more really cool conversations. You're
Yeah.
awesome. Love chatting with you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Little plug. So, OHbaby spring issue is on sale next week.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. It looks really cute too. Oh my gosh, the cover. Anyway,
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
I'll send you a sneak peek. And then if you want to watch us on YouTube, we are on the OHbaby magazine YouTube channel, and on Insta, our handle is at OHbaby magazine. Do you have a website that we can?
I have.
It's
called brainunderconstruction.co.nz, or my Instagram is at baby sleep with Ainslee. I'm also on TikTok, but that is a whole other beast, and I'm still getting used to that. So if you want to see me flailing around figuring out how to use a new platform, it's not that new anymore, but it makes me feel old, then it's at baby sleep with Ainslee as well.
Oh, cool. I'm gonna go follow it too. I'll get you a bit. I do the OHbaby one, but for TikTok, but not so good. I need, if anyone's listening and you're like a real great TikTok expert, just drop me an email or send me a message on Instagram, and I'll
Give us some
say hi.
tips. We
Yeah.
need it.
Hey, lovely to chat. Thank you so
Lovely
much.
to chat. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the OHbaby podcast. If you've found this episode useful and encouraging, make sure to share it with your village so that more mothers can feel empowered. Head to ohbaby.co.nz for more from us, and don't forget to subscribe. Mama, you got this. Till next time.